The chamber of the galactic conclave was older than most stars still burning in the known universe. Its walls were grown, not built, shaped from living crystal that absorbed sound and light. Every word spoken inside it carried weight, recorded not by machines but by the chamber itself. Hundreds of species had stood here across millions of years. Many had arrived proud. Most had left broken. Today, a human stood alone at the center. Elias Ward kept his hands at his sides and his breathing steady. He wore no armor, no symbols of rank, only a simple dark uniform with a small human emblem on the chest. Compared to the towering forms around him, beings of light, scales, metal, and shadow, he looked fragile. Some delegates whispered among themselves. Others watched in silent curiosity. At the highest platform floated Archon Kethril. Kethril was not a king, not exactly. His species, the Virelian Accord, did not rule through armies. They ruled through agreements. Every treaty, every trade pact, every gift they offered came with rules hidden so deep that no civilization had ever found them until it was too late. By the time they did, their economies depended on Virelian systems, their governments answered to conclave law, and their freedom existed only in name. Kethril's form shimmered, a tall figure of layered light shaped like a robed giant. His voice did not come from a mouth. It filled the chamber directly, calm and confident. "Representative of Earth," Kethril said, "you stand before the conclave at the end of your species' evaluation cycle. Humanity has survived first contact, expansion conflicts, and internal instability. This alone is impressive." Elias inclined his head slightly. He had practiced this moment for years. Not the words, those were simple, but the silence between them. "You are aware," Kethril continued, "that all emerging civilizations reach this point. You may accept integration into the conclave. In exchange, your people will receive protection, advanced technology, economic support, and stability." Images appeared in the air. Human cities transformed into shining towers. Diseases vanished. Ships crossed galaxies in seconds. Hunger disappeared. War became history. "Anything you want," Kethril said smoothly, "can be arranged." The chamber waited. Many species had fallen to their knees at this moment. Some had wept. Others had shouted their wishes with shaking voices. Elias did none of those things. He looked at the images, then up at Kethril. "I understand the offer," Elias said. His voice sounded small in the massive hall, but it did not shake. Kethril's light pulsed once, a gesture that might have been a smile. "Then speak your desire, human. The conclave listens." Elias paused. This pause was not fear, it was choice. "I want you," he said. The chamber went silent. Not the polite silence of listening, but a hard, sudden stillness. The living crystal walls dimmed. Several delegates shifted in confusion. A low ripple of sound passed through the hall as translation systems struggled, then confirmed the meaning. Kethril did not speak at first. "You want me," the Archon repeated. "Yes," Elias said simply. A murmur spread. Some thought it was humor. Others suspected a cultural misunderstanding. A few ancient beings leaned forward, sensing something wrong. Kethril's light flickered, then steadied. "Clarify your request. Do you seek my guidance, my species' patronage, a binding alliance?" Elias shook his head. "No." "Then explain." Elias lifted one hand and pointed, not aggressively but clearly. "You said anything. You did not limit the offer. I want you, Archon Kethril, as defined under conclave binding law." The silence deepened. Kethril's glow dimmed slightly. The chamber reacted. Symbols appeared in the air as the conclave's legal systems activated. Ancient clauses surfaced, rarely used, older than most member species. Kethril turned inward, reviewing the law. For the first time in thousands of years, uncertainty touched him. The offer had been absolute. It always was. That was how the Virelians showed power, by appearing limitless. No one had ever challenged it. No one had ever tried to claim the offerer instead of the reward. "You cannot possess a conclave Archon," Kethril said at last. I'm not possessing you, Elias replied. I'm claiming what was offered. The words were calm. That made them dangerous. A high-ranking delegate from a reptilian species spoke. This is absurd. The human misunderstands. The human understands, Elias said, turning slightly. We read the foundational accords. All of them, including the parts most species skip. That caused real unease. Most civilizations skimmed conclave law. It was vast, complex, and written over millions of years. Humans had not skimmed. They had assigned entire generations of legal scholars, historians, and pattern analysts to it. They had treated it like a puzzle. Kethril finally spoke again. Under Clause 7 of the binding offer, he said slowly, the petitioner may claim the direct service of the offering party in advisory capacity for a limited duration. Yes, Elias said, limited, defined by mutual terms. And those terms, Kethril asked. Elias met the Archon's gaze. You will accompany me. You will answer my questions honestly. You will observe humanity directly without filters or intermediaries. And after this duration, Kethril asked. Then the contract ends, Elias said. No harm, no imprisonment. No ownership. The chamber buzzed with tension. Kethril searched for an escape. There was none. The law was clear. The Virelians had written it themselves long ago when they never imagined being on the other side of it. This has never happened, Kethril said. First times are kind of our thing, Elias replied. A pause stretched. The conclave deliberated at speeds no human mind could follow. Outcomes branched, collapsed, reformed. In every valid path the conclusion was the same. The offer stood. So be it, Kethril said at last. By conclave law I accept. The chamber reacted sharply. Some delegates recoiled. Others stared at Elias as if seeing a predator for the first time. Elias let out a slow breath. Step 1 was done. Moments later the chamber shifted. The living crystal opened, forming a transit path. A human vessel waited beyond, a modest research ship, not a warship. Kethril noticed this. You did not bring weapons, he said as they moved. No, Elias replied. Didn't need them. Inside the vessel, Kethril experienced something entirely new, limitation. The human ship did not adapt to him. He had to adapt to it. Its systems did not bow. Its crew did not avert their eyes. They acknowledged him politely, professionally, like a visiting professor. This disturbed him more than hostility would have. As the ship moved into faster-than-light travel, Kethril observed quietly. Humans spoke openly around him. They debated, joked, questioned data. No rigid hierarchy dominated the room. Authority existed, but it was flexible, question-tested. You are not afraid of me, Kethril finally said. Elias looked up from a data screen. Should I be? I have ended civilizations, Kethril said. So have we, Elias replied. Mostly our own. We learned from it. Kethril studied the human carefully. You could have asked for safety, power, immortality. Yes, Elias said, but those things come with strings. And I do not, Kethril asked. Elias smiled faintly. That's what we're here to find out. The ship continued through the dark, carrying something the galaxy had never seen before. A human not kneeling before power, and a ruler beginning to understand that he had already lost something far more important than control. Far away in the conclave chamber, ancient beings reviewed the recordings again and again. For the first time in its long history, the conclave did not understand the future, and that frightened them. The human ship did not look like a palace, a temple, or a throne room. It looked like a tool. Archon Kethril noticed that first. The corridors were clean but plain. The lights were bright and steady, not dramatic. The walls had scuffs, small repairs, and labels in clear letters. The ship felt alive in a different way than conclave vessels. Conclave ships were made to impress. This ship was made to work. Elias Ward walked beside Kethril at a calm pace. He did not rush. He did not try to stay ahead. He acted like this was normal, like he was escorting a guest, not the most feared contract maker in the galaxy. Crew members passed them and nodded. Some looked curious. None bowed. None stepped aside in panic. Kethril did not hear chanting. He did not smell incense. No one treated him like a god. That did something to him. He did not like it, but he could not deny it was stable. They reached a door marked in simple human language, observation room. Elias pressed a panel. The door slid open. Inside, the room was wide and filled with screens. A long table sat in the center with chairs around it. On one wall was a large window showing the deep black of faster-than-light travel, a smooth, strange darkness with faint lines of light slipping past like rain. Kethril paused near the doorway. "This is where you plan to keep me," he said. "Not keep," Elias replied. "Work with. You can move around. You'll have a security escort because the ship can't always adapt to your biology. That's for safety. Yours and ours." Kethril's glow tightened slightly. "Safety," Elias nodded. "We're careful with unknown risks." Kethril drifted forward. "What are your questions, human?" Elias gestured to a chair. "Sit if that works for you." Kethril did not sit. His form floated. "Begin." Elias took a tablet and tapped it once. A simple text appeared on the main screen: Binding Offer, Clause 7, TERMS and Limits. "You already know the clause," Elias said, "but I want your version. Why does it exist?" Kethril's light shifted like a slow blink. "It was created to display generosity. The offer is a symbol. It shows that the conclave is above want." "But the clause about claiming the offering party," Elias said, "that part isn't generous, it's risky." Kethril hesitated. The hesitation was small, but Elias caught it. "It was written during an older era," Kethril said, "when the conclave feared internal betrayal. The clause was meant as a balance. If an archon became corrupted, a petitioner could force accountability without bloodshed." Elias leaned back slightly. "So it was a safety valve." "Yes," Kethril said, a little sharper, "but it has never been used, not until you." Elias nodded. He did not smile, he did not act proud, he simply recorded the answer. Kethril watched him. "You are not here for wealth, not for weapons, not for territory." "No," Elias said. "Then what is your aim?" Kethril asked. Elias tapped the tablet again. A new image appeared. It was a map of conclave trade lanes, legal zones, and protected systems. Lines crossed like a web. Some nodes glowed bright, others dim. "Our aim is to understand your web," Elias said. "Humans don't like invisible cages." Kethril's voice remained calm, but the room felt colder. "The conclave protects. It also controls," Elias said simply. A long silence followed. Kethril floated closer to the table. "You assume control is always evil." "I assume control is always hungry," Elias replied. Kethril tilted his head as if the concept itself had weight. "Hungry." "Yes," Elias said. "It starts small, a rule here, a fee there, a dependency. Then one day you look up and realize you can't breathe without permission." Some of the crew members in the back of the room looked uneasy. Not because of Kethril, but because the words were too real. Humans had lived through that many times, under kings, under corporations, under wars, under fear. They remembered. Kethril's light dimmed slightly. "And you think you are immune?" "No," Elias said. "We think we're stubborn." Kethril made a sound like quiet amusement. "Stubborn is not a shield." "It's not," Elias agreed. "But it slows things down, and slow gives time to learn." Elias stood and walked to the window. He placed his hands behind his back, looking into the dark. "I'm going to be direct," he said. "Your system is strong because it hides. We want to see it clearly. Not just the big laws, the little tricks, the pressure points, the parts you don't talk about." Kethril's glow sharpened. "You accuse me." "I'm not accusing," Elias replied. "I'm investigating." Kethril drifted around the table like a cautious storm. "Why should I cooperate beyond what the clause requires?" Elias turned from the window. "Because the clause requires honest answers." "And who defines honest?" Kethril asked. Elias lifted the tablet. "The conclave arbitration engine, the same one you use on others. We brought a copy of the foundational accords and their interpreter. It flags deception patterns. If you avoid, twist, or hide, it counts. For the first time, Kethriel looked truly disturbed. You brought an interpreter, he said slowly. We brought the law, Elias replied. Kethriel's light flickered. That engine was never meant for non-conclave use. Elias shrugged lightly. It was published as part of integration materials. Anyone could download it. Most species don't because it's boring. We did. The word boring came out like a quiet insult to the entire galaxy. Kethriel felt it land. He studied Elias again, not like a conqueror studies prey, but like a scientist studies a new chemical that might burn through glass. You read everything, Kethriel said. Yes, Elias replied. It's one of our survival habits. The ship hummed around them. Time passed in steady beats. Kethriel did not sleep. Elias did not look tired. He drank water, checked notes, listened. The conversation continued, step by step, like climbing a long staircase. Elias asked about the Conclave's first contact procedures. Kethriel answered with confidence at first, describing support packages, stability grants, and peacekeeping guarantees. Elias listened, then asked about exceptions, definitions, and consequences. Kethriel explained that stability grants required standardized infrastructure, and standardized infrastructure required Conclave-certified vendors. Those vendors were mostly Conclave-controlled. Elias asked how vendor certification was decided. Kethriel answered. Elias asked who audited the auditors. Kethriel paused. Crew members watched quietly. They saw something rare, a being like Kethriel cornered without a weapon, without a threat, without a raised voice. Just questions, just careful, patient questions. Hours later, Elias moved to a different angle. Let's talk about debt, Elias said. Kethriel's glow steadied again, relieved to be in familiar territory. Debt is a tool for growth. It's also a leash, Elias said. Kethriel's voice hardened. Your species uses debt. We do, Elias agreed. That's how we recognize it. Kethriel's light pulsed once. The Conclave offers low-interest developmental credit. Elias tilted his head. Low interest compared to what? Kethriel stayed silent for a second too long. The arbitration engine gave a soft sound, a warning. Elias raised a hand, gentle. You can answer, it's okay. Kethriel stared. Compared to independent lenders, compared to predators. Elias nodded. So you position yourself as the only safe choice. We are, Kethriel said. Safe, Elias repeated, tasting the word. Until you're not. Kethriel's glow grew brighter. You speak as if you know the future. No, Elias said. I speak as if humans have a long history of promises that turn into chains. Kethriel floated back. So your plan is to break the Conclave? Elias shook his head. Our plan is to stop it from breaking others. Kethriel's voice became colder. That is the same thing. Elias didn't argue. He simply looked at the map still on the screen, the bright web of control. Then something unexpected happened. The ship's alert tone sounded soft, not panicked. A crew member stepped forward and spoke to Elias. Sir, we're receiving a Conclave signal, priority channel. Elias took the message. He read it once, then again. Kethriel watched him. What is it? Elias' face stayed calm, but his eyes changed. The Conclave has filed an emergency review. They want to examine the terms of our clause. They're saying it may be an abuse of intent. Kethriel's light flared. Of course they do. Elias looked up. So they're nervous. Kethriel's voice turned sharp. They are not nervous, they are angry. Elias handed the tablet to a crew member. Send back our response. State that the clause is active, the terms are within bounds, and we request full arbitration review as defined. The crew member nodded and moved quickly. Kethriel drifted closer. You are forcing their hand. Good, Elias said. I want them to show their hand. Kethriel's light rippled. You want conflict. I want clarity, Elias replied. A few minutes later, the ship received a second message, another emergency notice. The Conclave would send observers. An arbitration panel would be assembled. They wanted Kethril returned for health reasons. Kethril let out a sound like a laugh, but it was not warm. Health reasons, they think you might infect me. Elia's mouth twitched. Or you might infect us. Kethril looked at him. Are you afraid of what I might say? Elias paused. Then he answered honestly. I'm not afraid of what you might say. I'm afraid of what we might understand. That answer hung in the air like a blade. Kethril studied him for a long moment. Humans seek truth even when it is dangerous. Elias shrugged. Sometimes, or we seek advantage, it's hard to separate the two. Kethril floated away from the table and toward the window. The dark outside reflected his layered light. For a moment, he looked less like a ruler and more like a trapped phenomenon. Tell me something, Elias Ward, Kethril said quietly. Do you think you can win? Elias walked to stand beside him. The human looked small next to the glowing form, but he did not step back. I don't know, Elias said, but I know we can learn fast enough to make winning the wrong question. Kethril turned slightly. What does that mean? It means the Conclave thinks in terms of control, Elias said. Win, lose, obey, resist. Humans think in terms of adaptation. If the environment changes, we change with it. Kethril's glow dimmed. Adaptation is not victory. It is when the other side can't keep up, Elias replied. They stood in silence for a while. The ship moved smoothly through faster-than-light space. The crew stayed quiet, giving them room. Then Kethril spoke again, softer now, almost thoughtful. When the Conclave first found your species, he said, your world was loud, radio waves, broken languages, conflicts. You were not united. We still aren't, Elias said. And yet you stand here, Kethril continued. You forced the claws, you demanded me. You did not ask for protection. Elias looked at him. Because protection isn't free, Kethril's light pulsed. Nothing is free, Elias nodded. Exactly. The ship's door opened and a woman entered. She was older with short gray hair and a calm face. She carried a thin folder and a data drive. Sir, she said to Elias, then nodded politely at Kethril. I'm Dr. Sana Iqbal, Legal Systems Team. Elias took the folder. Report. Yes, Sana said. We ran new simulations. If the Conclave tries to cancel Clause 7 by emergency vote, they'll need a specific number of elder species to agree. That means lobbying, threats, deals. Elias' eyes narrowed slightly. And how long would that take? Days, maybe weeks, Sana said. But they could also attempt to reinterpret anything you want as anything material. Elias gave a small smile. Can they? Sana shook her head. Not cleanly. Their own historical commentary says the offer includes non-material claims. That's the whole reason Clause 7 exists. Kethril watched this exchange with rising tension. Humans were not only reading the law, they were using its history, its commentary, its logic. They were treating it like a machine that could be understood and rewritten. Sana looked at Kethril. Archon, if you're wondering, yes, we cited your own recorded speeches from previous integration ceremonies. Kethril's light flared in anger. You used my words against me. Sana's expression stayed neutral. We used your words as evidence. That's how contracts work. Elias lifted a hand, stopping the sharpness from growing. Thank you, Doctor. Keep monitoring. Let me know if they shift tactics. Sana nodded and left. Kethril turned to Elias. You build armies out of paper. Elias exhaled slowly. Paper and patience. Kethril drifted closer until his light filled Elias' vision. Your species does not understand what you are waking. Elias did not flinch. Then tell me. Kethril's voice lowered. The Conclave is not one thing. It is many things. Some want peace. Some want profit. Some want control. But the oldest ones fear chaos more than cruelty. They will do anything to keep the web intact. Elias listened closely, including breaking their own law. Kethril's light steadied. If they believe the law threatens the system, yes. Elias nodded once. That's important. Kethril stared at him. And you are still not afraid. Elias' face was quiet. I'm afraid. I just don't let it drive. Kethril pulled back slightly as if that answer had pushed him. Later, when the ship entered a calmer corridor of travel, Elias called Kethril back to the table. He did not waste time. "One more topic today," Elias said. "Dependency." Kethril's light dimmed like a storm cloud. "You love harsh words." "I love clear words," Elias replied. "Tell me how the Conclave ensures member worlds can't leave." Kethril's voice sharpened. "We do not imprison worlds." Elias tapped the tablet. "Then explain the exit process." Kethril hesitated. The arbitration engine made a soft warning sound again. Elias leaned forward, voice calm. "Honest answer, Archon." Kethril's light trembled, then steadied. "The exit process requires debt settlement, infrastructure decertification, and trade lane permissions." Elias nodded. "And those things take how long?" "Decades," Kethril admitted. Elias' eyes narrowed slightly. "So you don't lock the door, you make it so heavy that no one can push it open." Kethril's voice became defensive. "It prevents collapse." "It prevents freedom," Elias corrected. Kethril's glow rose. "Freedom without stability is death." Elias stared at him for a long moment, then he spoke softly. "Humans have a saying," he said. "A safe cage is still a cage." Kethril did not reply. For the first time he looked like he had no perfect counter. Outside the ship, the darkness of faster-than-light travel continued, smooth and endless. Inside, something had changed. Kethril began to understand the danger, not because humans were stronger than the Conclave, not because they had more ships or better weapons, because they were willing to look at the system itself and ask, over and over, the one question most species avoided: why? And if humans learned the true shape of the web, they would not need to tear it apart with fire. They could loosen one thread at a time in the exact right places until the whole thing became something else. Kethril watched Elias gather his notes, calm and steady, as if he was simply doing his job. The Archon had faced rebellions before. He had faced pirates, rival empires, angry coalitions. None of them had frightened him like this quiet human did, because Elias Ward was not trying to fight the Conclave. He was trying to understand it well enough to make it unable to do what it had always done. And deep in his light, Kethril felt a new feeling, one he had not tasted in a very long time. Uncertainty. Not about today, not about the claws, not about the ship. Uncertainty about what kind of galaxy would exist after humans finished reading the fine print. The Conclave did not wait. That was the first thing Elias Ward understood when the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a neutral relay system. Messages flooded in before the crew even finished stabilizing. Legal notices, emergency motions, formal complaints written in careful language that tried to sound calm but failed. Archon Kethril stood near the observation window, his light dimmer than before. He had been quiet for hours, thinking. "They are moving faster than expected," Kethril said. Elias glanced at the data streams. "Fear does that." The Conclave had begun a galaxy-wide review of integration contracts. On the surface, it looked like a routine update. But Elias could see the pattern. Systems connected to human trade lanes were flagged, audits were announced, credit lines were paused temporarily. It was pressure applied carefully. "They are testing you," Kethril continued. "They want to see how you react." Elias nodded. "We expected that." He turned to the crew. "Open channel to Earth, priority." The screen shifted, showing a room filled with human officials, analysts, and advisors. No uniforms matched. No single person sat above the others. They looked tired, focused, alive. "The Conclave is squeezing," Elias said. "Stage 1. A woman on the screen replied, "We see it. They're trying to isolate us without triggering open conflict." "And?" Elias asked. "And it's not working," she said. "Other species are watching, quietly." That mattered. The Conclave's strength had always depended on silence. Worlds suffered alone, thinking their problems were unique. Humans changed that by talking openly, by sharing data, By publishing everything the conclave preferred to keep buried under polite language. Kethriel listened closely. "They are afraid of imitation," he said. "Yes," Elias replied, "because if one species learns how to push back, others will follow." The screen showed new data. Several mid-level member worlds had delayed payments to conclave vendors. A few had requested contract clarifications, small actions, legal actions, but together they formed a ripple. "The web is shaking," the analyst said. "Not breaking, but shaking." Kethriel's light pulsed slowly. "The elders will not tolerate this." Elias looked at him. "Tell me about the elders." Kethriel hesitated, then answered. "They are old, older than the conclave itself. They survived chaos, collapse, extinction waves. They believe control is kindness." "Because they saw what happens without it," Elias said. "Yes," Kethriel replied. "They will say you are reckless, dangerous. They will frame you as a threat to stability." Elias sighed quietly. "They're not wrong about the danger, just wrong about the direction." As if summoned by the conversation, a new message arrived. A formal conclave summons. Elias Ward was ordered to appear before an emergency arbitration council. "Not alone." "They want you there," Kethriel said. "They want you back," Elias corrected. The chamber was smaller than the main conclave hall but heavier in feeling. Fewer delegates, older ones. Their forms radiated age, patience, and power. Elias stood at the center again, but this time he was not alone. Kethriel floated beside him. The lead elder spoke. Its voice was slow, layered, and cold. "Human representative. You have exploited a ceremonial offer to disrupt galactic order." Elias met its gaze. "I followed your law." "The law was not meant for this," the elder replied. "Intent does not override text," Elias said calmly. "That principle is in your own records." Murmurs spread. The elder continued. "Your actions encourage instability. Worlds are questioning agreements that kept them alive." "Worlds are questioning agreements that trap them," Elias said. "That's different." The elder turned its attention to Kethriel. "Archon, you have shared restricted knowledge." Kethriel did not deny it. "I answered honestly as required." "You endangered the system," the elder said. Kethriel's light steadied. "The system endangered itself." That caused a stir. Archons did not speak like that, not publicly. The elder returned its focus to Elias. "What do you want, human? Power? Influence? To sit among us?" Elias shook his head. "We don't want your seats, we want your doors unlocked." Silence followed. Elias continued. "The conclave claims to protect freedom while quietly removing the option to leave. Humans cannot accept that." "And what if your actions cause collapse?" the elder asked. "What if war follows?" Elias answered honestly. "Then we deal with it." But fear of consequences cannot be an excuse for permanent control. The elder's form glowed brighter. "You are young. You do not understand chaos." Elias met its gaze. "We understand it very well. We just refuse to worship it." Another elder spoke. "Your species has already inspired unrest." "Unrest," Elias replied, "is often just awareness." The council recessed briefly. Elias stood still, breathing slow. Kethriel hovered beside him. "You are pushing them hard," Kethriel said quietly. "They've been pushing everyone for millions of years," Elias replied. "It's just their turn to feel it." When the council returned, the lead elder spoke again. "The clause remains valid for now, but know this, human, the conclave will adapt." Elias nodded. "We expect you to." The session ended. No victory was declared. No punishment issued, but something had shifted. As Elias and Kethriel left the chamber, messages spread across the network. Worlds shared recordings. Legal scholars began dissecting contracts. Quiet conversations became public debates. On one distant world, a small species filed its first request to exit conclave oversight, not to leave completely, but to renegotiate. The request cited human legal analysis. On another world, a council delayed approving a new dependency agreement, asking for clarity. Small steps, but steps forward. Back aboard the human ship, Elias stood at the window again, the stars stretched ahead. "They won't stop," Kethril said. "I know," Elias replied. "You may have started something you cannot finish." Elias looked at him. "That's okay. We're good at handing things off." Kethril watched the human carefully. "You are not conquerors." "No," Elias said. "We're readers." Kethril let the word settle. The galaxy was not free, not yet. The conclave still stood, its power remained vast. But now, for the first time, its law was being read by those it ruled. And that, Elias knew, was how empires truly began to change.